It appears as though the coup attempts on Parliament Hill continue. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in a cabinet meeting earlier today before he faces his caucus on Wednesday. Now, to chat about this in more detail, outdoors on location in Toronto, is Sun political columnist Brian Lilley. Brian, how serious is this challenge to Trudeau's leadership? Could we see a new Prime Minister here in Canada?
I'm skeptical, but when I talk to Liberals, they say, ooh, take it seriously. Even ones that aren't signing on, even Liberal MPs that say, oh, I've heard about it from my colleagues, but no, I haven't seen the letter, I haven't signed it, I'm not part of the coup. They're still saying, take this seriously. The Prime Minister is taking it seriously enough that it's unclear at this point whether he has postponed a trip to the Commonwealth leaders meeting in Samoa or if he's just put it off for now. Is he canceling it outright? We'll have to wait and see. But, going into cabinet today, first off, he normally walks in the front door. He normally stops and chats with reporters. Didn't do that today. Not sure if he went in the back door somehow or showed up really early to avoid all the media. But no comments from Trudeau heading in. Lots of cabinet ministers, though, stopping to speak and all pledging their undying loyalty to the man at the top. So interesting days in Ottawa, to be sure.
Now, is it being led by Anthony Housefather, the Jewish MP, Liberal MP, who's been outspoken against Trudeau in the past because of Trudeau's not really taking the stance of Israel when it comes to the war in Gaza?
I wouldn't think so. I've known Anthony Housefather since I was in Montreal, and he was on the sidelines of politics there at the local level. That's not really his style. I think we could assume that Sean Casey out of Prince Edward Island has signed on to it, Wayne Long out of New Brunswick, some others. But I wouldn't suspect that Housefather is part of that. We've heard, estimates of 20 names, 30 to 40 in some reports, one online claim of 47 people have signed on. I'd be shocked if they got to 25, quite frankly. And you have to remember, there's more than 150 Liberal MPs in the caucus. And if you only get that many, is it really a successful coup attempt? These guys have not been well organized in doing this. Unlike Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien, Martin's people actually went before the cameras, Hal. They went to people like you and I and said, hey, I think this guy has to go. This is my face. This is my name. Here's why he has to go. They're not doing that. It's all very quiet behind the scenes. It's actually why you've got someone like me, who's a pretty staunch critic of the Prime Minister, coming out and defending him in a way and saying these guys have to put up or shut up.
And Brian, two former chiefs of staff to former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien have come out saying that Trudeau needs to go. And we also interviewed Liberal MP, former Liberal MP, Dan McTeague on BCN recently, who served under Chrétien as well, saying the same thing, that Trudeau needs to be ousted. Is this a sign that the Liberal old guard believe that Trudeau really needs to be replaced?
Well, look, Dan McTeague has not been close to the Liberal Party in a very long time. I know Dan well from both seeing him socially here in Toronto, but his time in Ottawa, I've known him a long time. He long ago broke ranks with the Liberal Party. A lot of people were asking me, though, about Eddie Goldenberg, one of Jean Chrétien's chiefs of staff, and Senator Percy Down. Is this a way of Chrétien coming out and quietly putting the knife in Trudeau? And I'm told no, that these guys are speaking on their own. They're not normal surrogates for Trudeau. Often politicians will have surrogates go out for them, but I'm told in this case, that's not what's happening. Do I think that Chrétien probably believes Trudeau should go? Well, anyone that can read a poll would think that. But I think Chrétien is going to keep his thoughts to himself on this.
And Brian, there's apparently one candidate waiting in the wings if Trudeau does decide to step down, and it's not Chrystia Freeland or Mark Carney.
Yeah, former British Columbia Premier Christy Clark has come forward and said, yeah, I'm interested. It started with French CBC, Radio-Canada, putting forward their questions to her, and she responded in French. By the way, she's been going to Quebec, to Jonquière up in the north to Quebec to study French for the past several months. And she said that, yes, I'm interested in the job when it becomes open, but that is not going to happen for the foreseeable future. So, she's at least put a marker down. But here's the thing, Hal. You live next to British Columbia. You know BC politics. Christy Clark is not a Justin Trudeau-style Liberal. She is a business-style liberal. And the old British Columbia Liberal Party was a coalition of liberals and conservatives to fight the NDP. She was definitely on the federal liberal side of that. I wouldn't question that she's a liberal, but she is she where Trudeau has taken the federal Liberal Party? Christy Clark would have fit well with a Jean Chrétien government. She would have fit in well with Stephen Harper. They got along very well. They did a lot of great work together. Is she part of this NDP-branded Liberals that Justin Trudeau has created? He has, just like Kathleen Wynne did in Ontario, he has dragged the Liberal Party to the left of the NDP. Would she find a home? I'm not really so sure. I think she'd be a real a competitor for Pierre Poilievre because she's shown that she can govern. She's not crazy. She's not going to wreck the place. But would she find a home in the Liberal Party today? Doubtful.
But at the end of the day, does it even matter who the leader of the Liberal Party would be? I mean, Canadians are so disenfranchised right now, disconnected and just angry at the federal Liberals. Could this be another Kim Campbell scenario where Christy Clark takes over, but in the end, the Liberal Party gets wiped out at the next election?
I think that's the question for anyone that would take over at this moment in time. I think Christy Clark, has the potential to do better than most, definitely better than Chrystia Freeland, better than Mark Carney, who's never been tested, but by the way, said in a recent podcast interview, yes, I'm going to enter electoral politics. But the question that Liberals have to be asking is, and I think this is what Trudeau has been asking himself, and I think it plays into his thought process, who of these names would do better than him right now? Would they do better than him, or would they do worse? And there's a good argument to be made that despite how badly he's doing, he's the best of a bad lot at the moment. The Liberals may just have to ride this out, and then if things go as we expect, spend several years in opposition rebuilding the party. Trudeau took over a party that Michael Ignatieff had decimated, their worst showing ever after the 2011 campaign. He built it into a movement instead of a political party, and it's a movement centered around him. Very difficult for anyone to take over at this point with all the rule changes, with the cult of personality around him and all of that. So he might be their best shot.
And Brian, we heard from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Foreign Interference Commission. He said that those who leaked classified information to the media were criminals. Now, Brian, didn't we recently find out that Trudeau's own top officials briefed reporters from the Washington Post on claims about Indian foreign interference? What's the difference here?
The difference is domestic politics, and that's it. And that was the entire point of Trudeau's appearance at the Foreign Interference Commission last week. It was about playing politics. And you look at how he treats Indian foreign interference versus China. He wants to be very strong on India, wants to be very weak on China. China helps him get elected, fighting against the government of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. By doing that, he tries to get votes in the Khalistani portion of the Sikh community. It may be a small fraction of the Sikh community, but it generates buzz, it generates interest. These are highly motivated people, and there is some sympathy within the wider Sikh community for pushing back against Modi. Modi does not have a lot of support in the Sikh community. He is a Hindu nationalist, and that's how he runs his government. So, a lot of domestic politics at play with Trudeau doing this. But you're right, he called the people who leaked to the Globe and Global News on China interference, he called them criminals. But what did we find out? Days before, the RCMP held their news conference saying that these Indian diplomats were involved, top officials, his national security and intelligence officer, and the head of Global Affairs Canada. They went and they gave a briefing to the Washington Post, and they told them details that were not revealed by the RCMP. And they were told, you can publish this as soon as the RCMP gives their news conference, which is early in the morning on Thanksgiving Day. That is, if they were criminals in releasing information about China being involved in foreign interference, aren't these guys now criminals for releasing information about India?
Now, Brian, still with Trudeau, he went on a very long rant at the inquiry against federal Tory leader Pierre Poilievre, making several attacks against the opposition leader. He must be feeling, some of the heat a little bit after the polls say the Tories are well ahead of the Liberals, close to 20 points?
Yeah, so this was an attempt to try and use an official public inquiry to attack his political rival. It goes to show you that there is nothing Justin Trudeau will not play partisan politics on. So he attacked Poilievre for not getting his security clearance and not reading the report. This has been a Liberal talking point for months, but this was Trudeau's strongest hit against Poilievre on this. And a lot of people looked at it and said, well, kind of makes sense. Why won't he do this? Tom Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, and others who've been around politics a long time say, no, this is a red herring. This is a bad idea. If he gets the report, if he gets the briefing, he can't talk about it and he can't act on it. That's something that Mulcair has said. That's something that Katie Telford, Trudeau's chief of staff, has said. David McGuinty, the Liberal MP that chairs the Committee of Parliamentarians, says if you read this report, you cannot talk about it in public. So why would Poilievre go and get this report? Well, Trudeau says it so he can act. Well, but you can't act on the information because you're not supposed to know it. You're not supposed to do anything about it. Trudeau's line at the commission was, well, you can make up a reason. You can make up a reason and say, well, there was shady business dealings in the past or this or that happened. Trudeau wants party leaders to lie to the public rather than be open about foreign interference. He wants them to lie to the public. Here's the thing. Pierre Poilievre said, you're lying about this. You're not telling the truth at all. Release the names now. Pierre Poilievre wants all the names released, knowing that there will be Conservatives who are compromised, who are talked about in any detailed report. He says release the names. Justin Trudeau says don't tell the public anything, resist an inquiry, appoint David Johnston to whitewash it, and then if you really have to do something, lie, but don't tell the truth. That tells you everything you need to know about how these two men are handling this very serious and important issue.
Brian, the day after the appearance by CBC CEO Catherine Tait talking about millions of dollars in bonuses for executives after around 600 CBC staff were laid off, the Trudeau government announced a replacement for Catherine Tait. At this point, do we know who it is, and is the timing on purpose?
I think the timing is very much on purpose. Catherine Tait's appearance, where she was asked time and again, will you take a severance package when you leave? It's a 5-year appointment. Why you'd get severance for that, I don't know. You know how long you're in for. You know what you're getting paid. And she's paid about $400,000 a year, plus bonuses, of course, or at-risk pay, performance pay, as she calls it. So she would not answer that. She came across as arrogant, aloof, out of touch. There's a way to defend giving your executives bonuses that are politically unpopular without sounding like you are so out of touch with the average Canadian. But she couldn't do that. So yes, she appeared yesterday. Today they announced a longtime television executive in Quebec. I believe her name is Marie-Philippe Bouchard. She's going to take over. I'm not sure that she's going to do anything to improve the matter at CBC. Several commentators over the past couple of days saying Catherine Tait is the best argument for why CBC needs to be defunded. And by the way, if Pierre Poilievre does get elected and defund CBC, he's promised to leave French CBC alone. He's only going to get rid of English CBC. Two very different beasts, and they don't have as much competition or as many media outlets in French Quebec as we do in English Canada.
Brian, it was 10 years ago that Hamilton Argyle Nathan Cirillo was shot in the back by Zahef Bibo while standing guard unarmed at the National War Memorial in Ottawa. I mean, I covered this story with you. We chatted about it extensively when we worked together at the former Sun News Network in Ottawa. A very sad and surreal moment when Cirillo was killed.
It truly is. And I was Argyle myself in my younger days. And so I stopped by. They've got a little memorial plaque with the cap badge of the regiment out on the periphery of the National War Memorial. And every time I'm in Ottawa now, I stop by. But that day, I had gone out in the morning ahead of a morning news meeting to grab a coffee. And I ran into Conservative MP Mike Lake from up near Edmonton, and we just started chatting. He wanted to bend my ear about a possible initiative he was doing on autism. And because of that, Mike Lake missed the caucus meeting. He didn't get in. He was too late. And I got back to the office, and I walked through the door where you and I worked for so many years, and Ray Fillion stands up and says, "Shooter on the hill." I turned around and left, and I checked the timestamps. Was there before Michael Zahef Bibo, the shooter, was killed by Sergeant-at-Arms Kevin Vickers. But by that time, they were in lockdown. It was a very surreal day. And still thinking back to how tragic that was, that Corporal Cirillo was killed, shot in the back, as you say. There are interviews out there now with the 3 bystanders who tried to help him at the time. But most of the day, we did not know what was going on. I was reporting from an area where they were jamming cell phones and trying to call back in and get new information. And of course, you know what it's like when there's an emergency like that. The half-truths spread just as fast as anything else, and there's a dearth of information. But heart still breaks for him, for the Argylls, for his family.
And I remember that day specifically too, when Seth Bibeau stormed Centre Block and Parliament Hill. If he would have gone to the left, it was a caucus meeting with Stephen Harper and the Conservatives. If he would have gone on to the right, it would have been Tom Mulcair and the NDP. Instead, he bolted straight ahead for the library. And that's where you see all the bullet holes, and that's where he was shot and killed. It was just a pretty crazy day and a very sad day at the same time. Sun political columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for joining us today from Toronto.
Thank you, Hal.